Hey movie fans, and welcome to the last episode of both the Cimino trilogy and the Italian-American series. By the end of the previous episode, we found director Michael Cimino being blamed for all the excesses and flops that would doom New Hollywood to extinction. But was Heaven's Gate really the principal culprit? Most contemporary reviews focused on attacking Cimino personally, with some of the technical aspects of the movie being criticized almost as an afterthought. Several critics also decided to reevaluate their initial official position towards The Deer Hunter, denouncing a title they had praised just 2 years before. Perhaps here lies part of the reason why the movie failed. Cimino was not very well liked in Hollywood. His word to producers and executives meant nothing, and his abuse of power and control over United Artists' funds angered plenty of his peers who couldn't get their projects greenlit with the studio because of UA's commitment to Heaven's Gate. It was even rumored that the production costs impaired United Artists' ability to fund a proper Raging Bull Oscar campaign, costing Martin Scorsese his first Oscar. As for the movie itself, it would never be the big hit Cimino and the studio had hoped for. The entertainment and political climate in America had changed, and the grim, self-reflexive tone of Heaven's Gate would never sit well with audiences at the time. By 1981, moviegoers weren't open to dealing with guilt and revisiting the negative moments of the past. It was a time when the commercial and critical success of a title like Warren Beatty's Reds was an outlier, the exception and not the rule. Heaven's Gate would end up generating $3.5 million at the box office, less than 10% of its official budget. The movie received international praise, especially in Europe. When it comes to making up your mind on how guilty was Cimino, I'd like to invite you to either read or watch Final Cut, Art, Money and Ego in the Making of Heaven's Gate, and decide for yourself. After watching the movie, of course. But one thing is certain, had Cimino been the sole culprit, he wouldn't have been able to continue making movies. And that's exactly what he did. Cimino did not enjoy the same treatment as Coppola or Scorsese after the Heaven's Gate fiasco. After all, Coppola used his own money to finance One from the Heart, and Scorsese's King of Comedy had been praised by the critics and subject to an almost immediate reappreciation. Safe to say that Michael Cimino wouldn't be able to bring his Conquering Horse adaptation to life, a movie that would trace the history of the Sioux Indians in America and spoken in authentic Sioux dialogue with English subtitles. Nor would he helm his other passion project, the adaptation of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. But just moments after the second premiere of Heaven's Gate, Cimino was signed to direct a musical, a simple, high-concept vehicle by the name of Footloose. Once again, the director agreed to strict conditions, a $7.5 million budget with any additional expenses to be covered by Cimino himself. As the shooting was about to start, Cimino asked the producers for an extension, the right to rewrite the screenplay, and an additional $250,000. The director had envisioned Footloose as a musical retelling of The Grapes of Wrath, a story that needed extravagant musical numbers and complex sets. Producers dropped Cimino, fearing they would have another Heaven's Gate in their hands, and replaced him with the musical theater veteran Herbert Ross. It seemed like Cimino hadn't learned his lesson. The filmmaker continued to be associated with several projects and worked on numerous scripts, but all either failed to materialize or producers decided to go with other, less risky directors. Since Robert Daley's novel, Year of the Dragon, had been published in 1981, the Deer Hunter director was approached to helm the adaptation. The director finally agreed, but in a rare moment of clarity and reason, recognized he wouldn't be able to write and direct the movie in the strict schedule he was given by producer Dino De Laurentiis. Cimino got in touch with the screenwriter and filmmaker he had met in the past, Oliver Stone. Stone, who had won an Academy Award for penning the script for Midnight Express, tried to persuade Cimino to direct the movie. The award-winning scribe had just written a script for 1983 Scarface and was looking for buyers for his then unproduced Platoon screenplay. Cimino was impressed with Platoon and tried to produce the movie in 1984 unsuccessfully. The director persuaded the screenwriter to get involved in Year of the Dragon by ensuring that De Laurentiis would help the writer find financing for his own project. Cimino was keen to reunite with Jeff Bridges, who had appeared in two of the director's three movies, but opted for Bridges' co-star in Heaven's Gate, Mickey Rourke. Rourke had been singled out as the main highlight in The Pope of Greenwich Village and a perfect fit for the movie's lead character. In Year of the Dragon, we follow Stanley White, played by Mickey Rourke, New York City's most decorated police captain, and a Vietnam War veteran who is assigned to Chinatown with a personal mission to dismantle Chinese organized crime. White comes into conflict with Joey Tai, played by John Lone, an ambitious mafioso who ruthlessly rises to become the head of the triads, and as a result of his ambition, creates a high profile for himself and the organization's activities. Together, White and Joey Tai end the uneasy truce that existed between the triads and the police precinct, even as they conduct a personal war between themselves, the Italian mob, and Thai gangsters who have traditionally been involved in their heroin supply chain. White also becomes romantically involved with Tracy Tzu, a television reporter covering the ongoing war. After Tai escalates the attacks and intrudes into Stanley's personal life, the police captain becomes even more determined to destroy the triads. Year of the Dragon stood as proof that the director could make an original movie whilst retaining his personal vision. The title had a surprising simple production process, with Cimino delivering a movie 4 days over schedule, but $130,000 under budget. The Deer Hunter filmmaker shot the whole movie in sets built in North Carolina. The sets were realistic enough to fool Bronx native Stanley Kubrick, who had to be convinced that the film's exteriors hadn't been shot in New York. Furthermore, the director managed to stick to the original budget and still deliver breathtaking and unprecedented views, such as the unique New York skyline presented from Tracy's apartment. The apartment was actually built at the top of the Clock Tower building in New York City instead of using an already built structure. Michael Cimino retained Final Cut and was only asked to edit out the movie's original final scene, a request he agreed to. Year of the Dragon opened in August 1985 to poor box office results and polarized reviews after MGM rushed the release date. Many critics accused the movie of a racist portrayal of the Asian American community and also criticized the script whilst praising Mickey Rourke's performance and Michael Cimino's direction. The $25 million production yielded $18 million in revenues in the US and a total of $30 million in ticket sales worldwide. The negative reviews no doubt impacted the movie's performance. When it came to accolades, the title also displayed a mixed reception. Cahiers du Cinéma nominated the movie as the third best picture of 1985, and the title earned a nod for Best Foreign Film at the César Awards in France. At the Golden Globes, John Lone nabbed a Best Supporting nod, and David Mansfield received a Best Original Score nomination. Sadly, the title would also earn 5 Razzie nominations, including Worst Director and Worst Picture. In my opinion, Year of the Dragon is a terrific neo-noir movie and a personal favorite. Cimino's direction is extremely effective, showcasing the director's ability to shoot action sequences, and Stone's script is solid. Mickey Rourke is brilliant and convincing as a disgruntled police officer operating as a maverick and lone wolf. John Lone is an exceptional villain, with his performance resulting in him being cast in 1987's Best Picture winner, The Last Emperor. Ariana's performance is the movie's sole negative point. The model-turned-actress chews the scenery, and her wooden performance is off-putting. It's difficult to determine if Joan Chen, the other actress shortlisted for the role of Tracy Tzu, would have fared any better. I also believe that the reason why the movie received such negative criticism was because of the person directing it. Had William Friedkin or Michael Mann helmed the Year of the Dragon, the movie wouldn't have been the subject of such harsh criticism. Though the title was not a commercial comeback Cimino and MGM had hoped for, it would certainly put the filmmaker back on track, partially offsetting the negative reputation he had earned thanks to Heaven's Gate. Cimino's newly formed partnership with Dino De Laurentiis resulted in the director being attached to direct Truman Capote's novella Hand-Carved Coffins. The project didn't materialize, but the two would collaborate in another movie. When author Mario Puzo, the writer of The Godfather, published the novel The Sicilian in 1984, sports executive Bruce McNall bought the movie adaptation rights for $1 million. The directorial duties were offered to Martin Scorsese, Brian De Palma, and even The Godfather saga director Francis Ford Coppola. All declined. De Laurentiis and Fox then approached Michael Cimino, who was onboarded as the film's director. On paper, this was the ideal opportunity for any director to shine. Paramount had been tried unsuccessfully to produce a second follow-up to The Godfather for over a decade. The new source material would fill in that gap, even if it were to be made by a different studio. Puzo's novel was a spin-off and tie-in to The Godfather. Set in 1950, the movie covered Michael Corleone's time in Sicily and his run-in with the real-life bandit Salvatore Giuliano. Paramount, who owned the rights to The Godfather intellectual property and was still hoping to produce The Godfather Part 3, would not license the use of any Corleone-related characters, and the script had to be rewritten to remove any allusion to Puzo's iconic characters. Stephen Shagan penned the script with additional rewrites done by Cimino himself and an uncredited Gore Vidal. Studio meddling sank the movie before a single frame was shot. Michael Cimino was keen to cast the then relatively unknown Daniel Day-Lewis as Giuliano. Producers pushed for French actor Christopher Lambert, who had starred in Highlander the year before. Cimino accepted the casting choice as it would help to secure financing. The Sicilian tells the gripping tale of Salvatore Giuliano, a daring bandit who rises to become a symbol of resistance against Italian rule in post-World War II Sicily. With his band of guerrillas, Giuliano embarks on a crusade to liberate the oppressed peasants, robbing the rich landowners and earning the people's adoration. However, as his fame and power soar, so does his arrogance, leading him to clash with his backer, the head of the mafia, Don Massino Croce. Despite Don Croce's initial admiration for Giuliano, tensions escalate when Giuliano's ego threatens to disrupt the delicate balance of power in the island. Set against the backdrop of a tumultuous Sicilian landscape where politicians, dons, and cardinals wield immense influence, Giuliano's movements become a source of concern for the established powers. In a bid to eliminate the rebellious bandit, the Don manipulates Giuliano's closest advisor, Gaspare Picciota, into plotting his assassination. What follows is an all-out war between the key players in Sicily. Cimino delivered a 150-minute cut, 30 minutes longer than what had been agreed with the producers. The movie's backers pushed back, and an angry Cimino produced a shorter, 120-minute version that didn't include any action sequences. When Begelman and McNall, the movie's producers, watched the version, they were shocked at how badly it came across. But when they asked the director for an additional cut, he reminded them of his final cut right as long as he delivered a 2-hour picture. Fox sued Cimino, and producer Dino De Laurentiis was called as an expert witness, providing a side letter that accompanied Cimino's contract stating that he had no final cut rights. The judge sided with the studio, and Begelman cut the movie down to 115 minutes, resulting in an extremely disconnected and confusing picture. My thoughts on the movie: The Sicilian could have worked as a standalone Mario Puzo adaptation without the Corleone tie-in. In fact, the first 15 minutes of the movie are very good. The cinematography that conveys the sense of a modern-day western set in Sicily, the powerful shot of a ricochet of blood, and Cimino's most innovative camera work since Heaven's Gate. Camilla's introduction gives us a glimpse of how the director can deliver the goods when he wants to. The reason why these first few minutes of pristine filmmaking work is the absence of dialogue from Salvatore Giuliano. French native Christopher Lambert's conspicuous accent was a disaster as he took on the role of Giuliano. And not even Terence Stamp's stellar supporting role can salvage the Sicilian. Whilst poor casting is a major flaw in Heaven's Gate and The Year of the Dragon, these titles still work as full features. That's just not the case with the Sicilian. The movie plays out as an amalgamation of shots and a confusing plot that doesn't work on any level. As a source material, Puzo's book is rich in political conflict and power struggles, two topics Cimino had tackled in all his movies. For reasons unknown, he shies away from exploring these angles in the final product. The movie would open in October 1987 to negative reviews, generating $5 million in revenue against the $17 million budget. The movie was Cimino's first movie that failed to receive any praise from critics across the globe. If Heaven's Gate marked the director's decline, the Sicilian proved he had reached a point of no return. Safe to say that Michael Cimino's career didn't survive the 1980s. Still, the director's perseverance is commendable. Cimino replaced William Friedkin as the director of the 1990s thriller Desperate Hours, a remake of a 1955 movie. His third collaboration with Mickey Rourke covered the story of an extremely intelligent psychopath who takes refuge in a family home in the suburbs. Studio interference resulted in a movie riddled with plot holes and another commercial flop. His last full-feature release, The Sun Chaser, was released in 1996 and entered the Cannes Film Festival official competition, where it competed for the Palme d'Or. The road movie crime drama starring Woody Harrelson and John Cena finds a terminally ill escaped felon who is convinced that he can heal himself if he can get to a medicine man in Arizona. To get there, he kidnaps a yuppie lawyer. The title was yet another critical and commercial flop. The Sun Chaser proved to be a great bookend to Cimino's career, one that had started 22 years before with another road movie. The director's 1990s output ranges from mediocre to great. His overall career includes, at least in my opinion, only one true failure, and that's 1987's The Sicilian. Cimino passed away in 2016 without ever directing another feature film. The filmmaker would spend the rest of his life trying to gather funds to helm an adaptation of André Malraux's Men's Fate. In his last years, Cimino experienced a reappraisal, with Quentin Tarantino publicly supporting Year of the Dragon, and Heaven's Gate's original cut screened at the 2012 Venice Film Festival, where it was met with an enthusiastic reception. Often mentioned as an example of dictatorial director, there's no doubt that Cimino was an artist with a vision and a filmmaker who, in true Randian spirit, would not be willing to compromise. He left behind a short yet impactful body of work that deserves to be revisited and reappraised. And for his bold artistic decisions and creative mindset, I say, thank you, Mr. Cimino.